Canada is a country that rarely flaunts its military power. It doesn't march legions down boulevards or boast of arsenals on global television. Yet, behind that quiet demeanor lies one of the most disciplined, professional, and strategically valuable armies in the world. The Canadian Army is not built to intimidate, it's built to endure, to adapt, and to lead. In the frozen expanse of the Arctic, the rolling plains of Europe, and the deserts of the Middle East, Canadian soldiers have proven something time and again. You don't need to be the biggest to be among the best. When people think of military powers, they often picture the US, Russia, or China. But ask anyone who served alongside a Canadian, in Afghanistan, in peacekeeping missions, in NATO operations, and you'll hear the same thing. The Canadian Army is the one you want next to you when things get hard. Because Canada's military strength doesn't come from quantity. It comes from quality, precision, professionalism, and quiet excellence. Now, before we dive deeper into what makes this army so effective, its structure, its training, its global role, take a second to support this channel. If you enjoy deep dives into military power, strategy, and global defense analysis, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It helps us reach more viewers, keeps this kind of long-form storytelling alive, and lets us explore more forces like this one. Alright, back to Canada. The modern Canadian Army, known formally as the Canadian Army, CA, is the land component of the Canadian Armed Forces. It may not be large, around 23,000 full-time regulars and roughly 19,000 reservists, but it is one of the most well-trained and flexible armies on Earth. This is a force that has evolved from colonial militias into one of the world's most respected modern military institutions. Its origins go back to the early 20th century, when Canada emerged from under British command to establish its own defense identity. But the army truly came of age in the crucible of the World Wars. At Vimy Ridge in 1917, Canadian troops did what others couldn't, capturing a fortified German position through innovation, coordination, and relentless determination. That battle wasn't just a military victory, it was the moment Canada earned its reputation as a nation of soldiers who lead from the front. By World War II, that reputation had hardened into legend. Overham is defined not just by its history, but by its adaptability. It is one of the most multi-role, technologically integrated forces within NATO. It can shift from peacekeeping to high-intensity combat to disaster relief seamlessly. That flexibility comes from doctrine, a philosophy of readiness that has been tested in every environment imaginable. Let's start with training, the soul of any army. Every Canadian soldier begins at CFB Gagetown or CFB Wainwright, massive training centers where recruits are taught not just how to shoot or march, but how to think, survive, and lead. Canadian soldiers train for the unexpected. Snowstorms, desert heat, jungle humidity, or urban chaos. They are taught to operate in small, self-sufficient units, emphasizing initiative and improvisation. That independence is key. Canada's military structure is designed so that even its smallest elements, a platoon, a section, can function effectively without constant top-down orders. This comes from necessity. Canada's geography is vast, its missions often far-flung, and its deployments usually joint operations where flexibility is essential. From Afghanistan to Iraq to Latvia, Canadian soldiers have earned a reputation for calm precision. They're problem solvers. In combat zones, they build relationships with local populations. In NATO exercises, they serve as mediators between different national doctrines. That combination of professionalism and diplomacy makes them invaluable. Part of what makes the Canadian Army stand out is its expeditionary capability. Despite its size, Canada regularly deploys across continents. A remarkable feat for a country with a relatively small population. This is made possible by a robust logistics network and integration with allies, especially under NATO and UN frameworks. In Afghanistan, Canadian troops played a central role in Kandahar, one of the most volatile regions of the conflict. They led counterinsurgency operations, reconstruction efforts, and special missions with distinction. The cost was high, 158 soldiers lost, but their legacy reshaped NATO's view of Canada from peacekeepers to frontline warriors. Yet, even as Canada proved itself in combat, it never abandoned its humanitarian core. The Canadian Army is as skilled at building as it is at fighting. From disaster relief in Haiti and the Philippines to flood and wildfire response at home, it demonstrates that strength isn't just about force, it's about service. This dual character, warrior and peacekeeper, defines Canada's military identity. It's an army that acts as both a sword and a shield. Technologically, the Canadian Army is undergoing one of the most ambitious modernization efforts in its history. At the center of this is strong, secure, engaged Canada's defense policy, which emphasizes mobility, modernization, and interoperability. The cornerstone of that modernization is the Land Vehicle Modernization Program, which upgrades everything from armored vehicles to communications networks. The LAV 6.0 Light Armored Vehicle, built by General Dynamics in Canada, is the pride of the fleet. Highly mobile, heavily protected, and adaptable for multiple roles, it serves as the Army's primary combat platform. These vehicles, paired with Coyote reconnaissance variants and TAPV, Tactical Armored Patrol Vehicles, form the backbone of Canada's mechanized infantry forces. They are supported by artillery systems like the M777 howitzer, a lightweight, long-range cannon capable of striking targets with GPS-guided precision rounds. Canada's artillery played a crucial role in Afghanistan and continues to contribute to NATO operations in Eastern Europe. But hardware alone doesn't explain dominance, doctrine does. Canada's strength lies in how it integrates land, air, and special operations. Its soldiers are trained to coordinate seamlessly with Air Force assets, intelligence units, and allied commands. This makes Canadian deployments incredibly efficient. Every movement, every fire mission, every patrol is synchronized with a precision far larger armies often lack. That synchronization extends to technology. The Army is investing in next-generation communication systems, battlefield networking, and drone integration. In the Arctic, where Canada faces one of its toughest challenges, extreme cold, isolation, and potential geopolitical competition, the Army is developing equipment and vehicles capable of operating in temperatures below -40 degrees Celsius. Few forces on Earth can match Canada's expertise in Arctic warfare. That experience is becoming strategically vital. As global warming opens northern sea routes and exposes untapped resources, the Arctic is turning into a new geopolitical frontier. Russia has militarized its northern coast. China is eyeing polar trade routes. Canada, with its vast Arctic territory, is at the center of this emerging chessboard. And the Canadian Army, through the Canadian Rangers, Indigenous-led reserve units specializing in Arctic survival and reconnaissance, is the first line of defense in that frozen domain. The Rangers symbolize something deeper, a uniquely Canadian approach to defense. They combine modern technology with traditional knowledge, snowmobiles and rifles with centuries-old survival skills. It's a perfect metaphor for Canada's broader strategy, merging innovation with experience, technology with humanity. Canada's leadership also shows through its alliances. Within NATO, Canadian troops command multinational battle groups in Latvia, forming the Eastern Front of Europe's deterrent against aggression. They train alongside British, German, Polish, and American units, integrating flawlessly into joint operations. In peacekeeping, Canada's soldiers and officers are valued for their neutrality and discipline, traits that have defined the nation's reputation since the Cold War. But perhaps the greatest asset of the Canadian Army is not its equipment or deployments, it's its people. The Canadian soldier is trained not just as a fighter but as a thinker. Critical decision-making, ethics, and leadership form the core of military education. This culture produces soldiers who can command respect and make moral decisions under fire. Unlike many militaries that emphasize hierarchy above all, the Canadian Army prizes adaptability and empathy. That makes it effective in modern conflicts where hearts and minds matter as much as firepower. In Mali, Lebanon, and Iraq, Canadian advisors are often chosen to train local forces precisely because they can teach without arrogance and lead without domination. This balance of toughness and restraint defines Canada's military ethos: power under control. Of course, every army faces challenges. Canada's defense budget has long been a political debate, hovering around 1.3% of GDP, below NATO's target. Equipment procurement can be slow, and modernization faces bureaucratic hurdles. But what Canada lacks in size or spending, it compensates for in efficiency. The Canadian Army knows how to stretch resources and maintain excellence with discipline. Moreover, its cooperation with allies allows it to access advanced technology and intelligence networks that amplify its reach. Canada may not have fleets of tanks or bombers, but it doesn't need to. It's embedded in a collective defense system where its contributions are critical. When the US or NATO deploys, Canada is always there, reliable, professional, and mission-ready. From Kosovo to Iraq to Ukraine, the maple leaf patch has become a symbol of competence and courage. And while the Canadian Army rarely makes headlines, its soldiers are consistently ranked among the best trained in the world. Their marksmanship, endurance, and tactical awareness are admired by peers. They train in conditions that would cripple others. sub-zero winters, endless forests, rugged mountains. That environment forges toughness, both mental and physical. It's that resilience that defines the Canadian soldier. Whether they're patrolling the icy tundra, peacekeeping in conflict zones, or rebuilding after natural disasters, they embody the quiet strength of their country, unshaken, unyielding, unpretentious. Beyond combat, Canada's military contributions often go unnoticed but are essential to global stability. Canadian officers serve in leadership positions across NATO command structures and UN missions. The Army's engineers build infrastructure in war-torn regions, its medics save lives in disaster zones, and its trainers shape the next generation of allied forces. That's what makes the Canadian Army powerful, not domination but influence. It doesn't impose order through might, it restores it through precision, professionalism, and trust. And when crisis strikes at home, Canadians see their soldiers not as distant warriors, but as protectors. During floods, fires, and pandemics, the Army steps in, building, rescuing, helping. It's a military woven into the fabric of the nation, respected not for aggression but for service. Still, Canada is preparing for a future that demands more readiness. The wars of tomorrow, cyber, hybrid, and information warfare, are blurring the line between soldier and strategist. The Army is investing in cyber defense, AI-assisted logistics, and new reconnaissance technologies to ensure it can fight, and win, in both the physical and digital arenas. It's also preparing for joint operations in the Indo-Pacific, where global power rivalries are intensifying. Canada may not seek confrontation, but it recognizes that stability requires presence. And the Canadian Army, alongside its Navy and Air Force, forms that presence. A calm, steady guardian in a volatile world. In the end, the Canadian Army's power isn't measured by the size of its arsenal or the scope of its empire. It's measured by something far more enduring: reliability. When allies call, Canada answers. When peace needs defending, it acts. When disaster strikes, it's already on the way. It's an army of professionals, thinkers, and leaders who see military power not as a tool of dominance, but as a responsibility. It's a force that understands restraint, values humanity,